Coming up tonight, the Anthem returns to Puerto Rico. We make another visit to Spectors Cabaret, and we spend some time with the Maestro himself. It's all coming up, so let's set sail. Welcome to day 6 of the cruise view from on board the Anthem of the Seas. For today, May 8th, 2018. Once again, I am Picone, and today was our next port of call, Puerto Rico. We returned to the place where last year's sailing came to an end. And unlike last year's sailing where it was scheduled for an afternoon arrival late into the evening, similar to St. Maarten as we had yesterday, this year's was a very early arrival with a very early afternoon departure. So when I woke up this morning at 6 a.m., we were already passing land right off the side of the ship. And at 6:15, we passed the fort just as the sun was finally rising. And that led us to our docking at 7 a.m. this morning. This afternoon, we then departed at 2:20 p.m. Getting us to the fort at about 2:45 p.m. before heading off into open seas again. And that was an early departure. The original departure time was scheduled as 3 o'clock. I believe the compass that was put on the bed said 2:30. The compasses that were handed out today and all the announcements on the ship said 2 p.m. So it's a changing time, and that's something we saw yesterday with St. Maarten. The actual departure time was a half hour earlier than the original listed time. And I believe Bermuda was a similar situation where it's just a hair earlier than originally scheduled. But in addition to us in Puerto Rico today, this is the one day where there is another ship in port. This afternoon, the Carnival Sunshine arrived at about 1 p.m. You could see her just over the hill before she finally made her way past the fort and into the harbor, and then came to a stop at the adjacent pier, the full terminal pier that's located right next door to the one that's often used by the Royal Caribbean ships. And while we left this afternoon, she will remain there until 8 p.m. tonight. And as for our weather today, we had a sunrise, as I mentioned, at 6:05 a.m. just about when we were passing that fort, so it made that beautiful shot for us as the sun rose over top of the fort. And then tonight we had a sunset at 7:03 p.m., but the cloud cover really kind of obscured that and made it a little hard to see. Our high today was 85 degrees, and it was certainly a very hot, sunny 85 degrees. But with that sun, we also had a mix of partly cloudy skies, and there was a chance of showers, which did come to be. When you looked out all afternoon, it was really kind of interesting. On one half of the ship, you'd look, and it would be all black skies and rain. The other half of the ship was all sunny blue skies. There was a real mix of weather out there, and depending on how the wind fell, determine if you're getting rain or sun at that moment. And for the most part, we did get sun, but there were a few passing showers in the morning time. Up to this point, the winds have been a big story, and last night we had absolutely calm conditions as we sailed. There was almost no wind on the top deck. Today in Puerto Rico, it was a pretty calm arrival. In port, we did get a few periods of wind. It seemed like when those storms would move in, with them came a lot of very high winds. But beyond that, it was once again a calm day of wind, which is a change from what we saw in the previous ports where it was very windy the entire time. So we were in port, less going on, but there were still a few things to mention. So we did arrive first thing in the morning, so that meant that for the most part the morning activities weren't really around. Instead, you go to what happened in port. And for me, Puerto Rico is one that we've been to a couple times, so we did not do any kind of excursion. I used this as another opportunity to explore the ship deserted and get some footage for that cruise tour video that you'll be able to check out. So instead, I just took a little bit of time to step off the ship, see what the Anthem of the Seas looks like from the outside, get a few nice shots, for the most part, it was not crowded and very efficient. We actually were cleared within a few minutes, I think at most maybe 10-15 minutes after docking, whereas when the Carnival ship showed up, it was a good 30 to 60 minutes before passengers started getting off of that ship. So it's a much more efficient job when the Anthem pulled in this morning. And of course, Puerto Rico was one of the islands hit by that hurricane just about 9 months ago, and she still has some of the lingering effects of that. There's not a whole lot of visible damage. You could see a few buildings that had some damage, but overall there wasn't much, nothing like we saw in St. Maarten where there were complete buildings demolished. But the one difference that I noticed between St. Maarten and Puerto Rico, St. Maarten seemed to be progressing back to recovery very quickly. They had much higher hit damage to buildings. They had complete demolished buildings, so they were a much more severe situation. But they seem to be progressing. Everything seems to be in some state of recovery. Their pier is completely fixed. Everything is moving forward. Whereas Puerto Rico, there was nothing to that extent of damage. But the things that did have damage seemed like they weren't being fixed, even though they were minor things. Even when you looked at the piers, they've been up and operating for months now, but the actual catwalks that connect the different pieces to tie the ship off to, many of those were twisted, mangled, or just completely missing, and they haven't been fixed in this time. So those seem like very simple things, or at least they should be simple things to fix that you'd think they'd be trying to do, but they haven't. There are areas of buildings where there's a piece of sheet metal missing that you'd think they could get fixed a little quicker. So it doesn't seem like Puerto Rico is moving quite as quickly as we saw St. Maarten, but luckily their damage should not seem anywhere near as severe as what St. Maarten had yesterday. And as I mentioned, there was some rain throughout the days, so I happened to get very lucky, and right when I was ready to walk back to the ship, it started to rain. A little bit of a drizzle as I got through the first security checkpoint. When I got to the second one, it started raining harder. Ran to the ship, bottom of the gangway, it started pouring, waited there until the gangway was clear, and made a run onto the ship. So I didn't get too wet, but it did still rain, and for the most part, people seemed to hang back on the ship whenever the rainstorms passed through and held off on exiting the ship until they were done. But even with those passing rain showers, the very visible storm clouds that were always present nearby the entire day, the ship once again got very empty. It seemed like almost everybody went out. And then with our early departure this afternoon, it meant there was some time left over for dinner. So as we started to hit about 1 o'clock, you could really tell the pool deck was just filling up. And by the time we got to departure, the entire pool deck was full as if it was just any other sea day. So a lot of people took advantage of the pools after taking advantage of their time on shore for Puerto Rico. Then this afternoon, after that departure, I did stop by the iFly desk over at the sports area to see if they're offering any secondary reservations for people that wanted to do it again. And to my surprise, it sounded like they were, but there was actually a slot open in that section, so I got right in and got to do another iFly run today. So if you do have a longer sailing, longer than 5 days, be sure to check out the iFly towards the end of the sailing, the last like 2, 3, in this case even 4 days, and see if they have any availability, because if they do have a lot of openings, they will open it up for people to do it a second time, or if somebody doesn't show up, you can always grab that open spot if they allow. And with all the sports activities on board the ship, the crew always want to make sure that everyone's progressing and enjoying themselves, not getting bored with these activities. So since this was the second time for this sailing, and I believe the 6th or 7th time overall that I've done the iFly now between Quantum, the previous Anthem sailing, and this one, they of course helped me progress a little bit, learn a few more skills, and fine-tune my handling skills to be able to steer myself within that wind tunnel of the iFly, as well as to get much higher than I think I've ever been in iFly before today. So I did that at about 4:20 this afternoon, and then of course 5:30 tonight was dinner. Once again I went to the main dining room, and tonight's menu was another odd mix. It had some good items, some odd items, but the big thing was it had items that we already had on the sailing. I started off with a soup I don't believe I've ever had on any other sailing. I've had the hot harira soup, but today they had the spicy harissa soup, which was similar but very different in taste. And then for my entree, I got the lasagna al forno, which of course was on the menu maybe 4 nights ago. So this is only a 9-night sailing, certainly not maxing out the menu system, but they are repeating items. And it seemed like only that one item repeated, not all the items on the menu. And then for dessert, I got a tiramisu, which came in a nice little cup, similar to the parfait displays that they do some of the desserts as. So overall, this menu does not seem as good as the old one. The old one, of course, had the separate sections for the classic items as well as the special items. So you knew exactly what was for each day, what is available every day, so you could make a better judgment call. But now we're starting to see that not only do you have to try to determine what's available every day versus what's special that day, some of those special items are repeating as well. So previously, when that lasagna was on, I actually got 2 entrees, the chicken cordon bleu and the lasagna, which if I knew lasagna was coming again, I probably would have only gone for that 1 entree. So we have fewer items repeating. That does not sound like a good thing. But to kind of counter this, the kitchen has to prepare fewer items. They're more familiar with those items, and it could just be our waitstaff, but this sailing I have seen more made to order and more individualized catering to guests and their needs and trying to get them exactly what they want to eat for dinner every night. So perhaps that's a side effect to the negativity, the smaller menu, but maybe that's allowing them to be a little more individualized when guests do need something different or cannot find something on the menu. So hopefully that's a positive that'll come out of this change. Then following dinner, of course, you got the evening show. Tonight we had someone that was labeled as a rock star juggler. It was Mike Price. This was the first time I've seen him on a cruise, and he very much seemed to fit in with this cruise. Don't know what it is about this sailing, but it seems like all these shows really have a tendency to pick on the audience. We see it with Chloe all the time, we see it with the guest entertainers and the comedians, and now even the jugglers are doing it. A lot of that back and forth bantering between the guests and the actual show. So a little bit more interactive than what we've seen with traditional headliners, and certainly made it far more entertaining. And with today's act, there was probably about a 60 to 70% comedy factor versus the actual juggling element of it. A lot of time certainly was spent to the banter back and forth with the crowd and really just making it a little more entertaining than a traditional juggling act that we've seen in the past.
Are you gonna YouTube this and then send it to her, and then she can like it and then send it back to you, and you guys can talk about the show from your phone? Like, did you see him do the trick this fine? Dink! No, I didn't. I was too busy looking at my phone. Dink! It's funny. All right.
But when it did come to the juggling, there were, of course, different levels of juggling, different number of items and kinds of items, but for the most part, it was a pretty traditional juggling act, starting out with the various items and then ending with a unicycle juggling routine. Then once that show was over, I headed over here to 270, my favorite place on the ship, and checked out Spectors Cabaret once more. This is, I believe, the 6th time that I have now seen that show, and I did catch a little bit of the first show. That was nice. There were 2 of them, so it was about 6.5 times I've seen Spectors Cabaret now. Somehow I got lucky tonight, and I got right up front, first row, the prime seats in the house. And that was without a reservation. I showed up actually after the entire standby line was entered into the venue, and there was absolutely no one at the door. Just walked right in, and somehow the entire first row was empty. There were people second on up, but nobody took that first row. So I got that prime spot again, and that really is the best place. So I've said many times, you really need to see it from the top area. Come here and sit up in the top area, get a nice view of the entire show. Sit in the back, watch it all, see the Vistoramas, the aerial lists, everything that's going on, and appreciate the show for what it is, but then you gotta go a second time and sit in that front row and just experience Spectors Cabaret, because it really is an experience when you're sitting in that front row versus a show that you're watching like you see when you're in the back farther. And that pretty much wrapped up the night. That ended nearly midnight tonight, I think like 11:45. But that takes us to our next item, our interview for tonight. Today I got to sit down with the Maestro himself, the man who basically runs Spectors Cabaret, Terry Lavell.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight is going to be epic. Spectra taught you something today. You're so welcome.
So today I'm joined by Terry, who is the Maestro in Spectors Cabaret.
That is me.
Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everybody.
So can you give a little bit of the background on your career?
Sure. I am, I started professionally performing when I graduated college. I would say probably college. I've been performing all my life, though. Mm-hmm. I've been singing in the church choir. My parents are pastors, so I've been singing since a young age and dancing. And I graduated from Northwestern State University in Louisiana with a dance and theater degree, and then I decided to kind of like do it big, and I wanted to, one of my main goals of life was always to be on Broadway.
Yeah.
So after I graduated from college, I went directly to work for Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida, which was amazing. And then I did Universal Studios as the Frankenstein monster. I'm already 6'5", so it's like 6'7". And then that was my first time working for Royal Caribbean. After that, I ended up doing the Adventure of the Seas. I did 3 contracts, and after that I was like, you know what, I've done cruise ships, it's time for me to move on. Mm-hmm. I had a dream of living in New York City, and I moved to New York City, and I lived there formally for like 13-14 years. I've been touring. The last show I did on Broadway was La Cage aux Folles, starring Kelsey Grammer and Douglas Hodge, which we actually won the Best Revival Tony. And just doing a lot of regional theater, a lot of tours. And then about 4 years ago, my manager got an email from Royal Caribbean about a show that was being created on Royal Caribbean that had already started, and they were interested in seeing me. So that's that. Now I'm here and we're speaking. So yeah, cool. So yeah.
So could you give a little bit of the concept of Spectors Cabaret?
It's interesting when people see it, and when I first saw the show, actually when I auditioned for it through my manager, I was unsure of the concept of it until I had to really get and divulge into it. And just so that you know, give you a little background on it, it was created in co-creation with a company called The Moment Factory and Royal Caribbean. And Spectors Cabaret takes you through a journey through light and sound, and this the most amazing technology that you start off and you come and then you're like, I don't know what to expect. By the middle of the show, I literally see people's jaws open and drop. So this whole experience that Nick Weir has created takes you on this amazing journey through time and space, where you really appreciate sound and light and the scheme of things that in a way that you've actually never seen it. And then my character kind of takes you on that journey, and the cabaret just brings you a part of it, as if like a cruise ship, spaceship kind of idea. So it's a very intimate setting. Yeah. We break the fourth wall. So I take you on this emotional journey through all kind of creations of light, through music, and the dancers' movement through sound and music, whether it's flying or movement and dance, or our musicians in drumming. We take you on this amazing journey that takes you through the sound and light, and my character kind of brings that to life.
So can you give a little detail on what your role actually does throughout the show?
Sure. It's interesting with this role because it's, in most of my life in doing professional theater and Broadway shows, this is the most challenging role I feel like I've ever done, because it is basically who I am. And to explain that in detail, this Spectors Cabaret, Spectra, the character is ambiguous. The character is androgynous. So when you start this journey, the character comes out, so you live in a world where you see a character who takes you somewhere, but you really don't know what the character identifies as. Yeah. So once you leave, you're like, you're not remembering male, female, you just remember Spectra. So I take you through this emotional journey that's gonna start with me coming out. I hit you with my rhythm stick, and my rhythm stick is basically telling you that this is my rhythm stick taking you through time. I get pixelated, I go through the journey, you come with me. I'm asking you to take a journey outside of your reality. Because I think sometimes in so many normal shows, we don't want to step out of what we feel is normal. So Spectra takes you out of your everyday reality, and I put you in this world, and I take you on this amazing journey. But throughout the journey, I've given you all completely different facets of who I am. The soft side, the evil side, the nice side, the sweet side, the side that loves children, the side that loves men, the side that loves women. So it kind of like caters to the masses with the character. Mm-hmm.
And then with that show, you've had a few different contracts, been on here a while. How does your contract work compared to the rest of the cast?
It's interesting. We normally with Royal Caribbean, you start with your cast, you leave with your cast. Last year, when I first started this journey, I did 8 months. Then I did it again. I did 10 and a half months. So now I'm on a contract now where I don't start with the cast. I take 2 month vacations and I just come back. Mm-hmm. So I'm extremely grateful for it. It's one of the, actually, in my entire career, one of the longest jobs I've had, and I'm so grateful. I have to say that to Royal Caribbean, Robert Kling, Christy Coachman, Nick Weir. I am so tremendously grateful for this show. It has really changed my life. So I usually go home for 2 months, and I come back. Like, I leave with this cast, and then I'll come back with the cast, but I don't start with them. Yeah.
So how is it to adjust to all these new casts as you go through?
That's interesting. I think 4 times now. The challenging part is to make sure that I come in and not necessarily change the energy of the room. So what I try to do is this first group that I came to just now, they were already amazing, and the other Spectra is amazing. So I just wanted to continue what she started. So coming in, making sure that I adjust to their energy and that we kind of keep the level going. So it's really challenging, but it's fun.
And a big feature of 270 is the technology. It's basically a character within the show.
Yes.
How is it to work with that?
I can tell you that I feel like I have done so many like shows around the United States. I've been to like 130 cities in the United States of America. I've toured 3 or 4 years, and I'm so used to not breaking the fourth wall, and it's basic. I come to work on a cruise ship again for Royal Caribbean, and it has blown my mind with the technology alone. Even just how advanced the theater is, like $30-40 million, and the robots and the staging and the lighting. I can tell you, based on most of the shows that I've seen, as compared to a show in Las Vegas, it's compared to that. But it's Moment Factor. It's like, it's edgy, and I'm so grateful that Royal Caribbean actually has pushed the edge of what we kind of normally see as a production show. But this is, listen, ladies and gentlemen, get to see Spectra. It is far and beyond any show, and most people who see it, all people come see it, they're blown away. But the technology, it doesn't give us a lot of problems, but like the robots are a part of our show. They're virtual, so they interact with me, but I actually love it.
Yeah. So you've got moments with the robots where obviously it's very strict and scripted, but you also have a lot of time in between where you're just kind of improvising around the venue. How do you handle those moments?
It's interesting because when you're scripted, it's easy to script. The hardest part about doing Spectors Cabaret is to completely stay in the moment and go with what I'm feeling in the energy. So normally I tend to let the crowd dictate my energy on, not my energy necessarily, but my dialogue. So there are places that they've given me kind of leeway to kind of play around with certain things, but certain things are set. But what I love about the cabaret setting is that I am allowed to feed off of children, feed off of adults, feed off of families. So most of the time, like if the kids are excited, I love giving people high fives, shaking people's hands. Sometimes I give my rhythm stick to some of the kids. And there have even been times that I've like allowed kids to come dance with me. So it's very interactive, but as an actor, improving is so hard.
Yeah.
It's extremely difficult.
Spectors Cabaret has a large variety of scenes to it, all different kinds of styles. What is your favorite scene out of the show?
Oh, that is a good question. I would say probably this is hard. My favorite section of the show is actually, we call it, it's right before the rabbit hole. Let me explain. It is going into me taking you into the actual world of Spectors Cabaret. And the transition to me is it just blows my mind every time I see it. And when I actually go into the rabbit hole and I pixelate and the robots are kind of taking you on this journey, it's the best part of the show. It's the best part of the show for me because I think it kind of like puts it together. Like I can actually see people's reactions in the audience looking like, oh my God, I'm on a cruise ship. That's the first thing I feel like people are saying.
Yeah. So you're a pretty big part of this show. If Nick Weir were to come to you tomorrow and say,
don't come, Nick.
one of these scenes has to get cut out, what would you want to replace it with?
Oh my God, I would say, I would not necessarily replace anything. I feel like I have like all these ideas and concepts. I feel like, you know, like on the bigger ships right now, the Harmony, in those class of ships, they have water shows.
Yeah.
I would add water. I would take the element of what Spectra's doing and take it to the next level. And I know like they have those shows already on the larger ships, the Oasis class, but those class of ships don't have singers. They have flying, diving. So there are a couple of numbers, like there's the India Sky number. Sometimes I'd be like, I don't know if I would keep that in the show or keep it, but I've also seen people who love it. So I think if I decided to say I would take something away from the show, then somebody else will come to see the show and be like, well, I love that part. So I actually love the continuity of the show, but I would give it a little bit more edge and give it some like water or something.
Great. So you've been involved with the show for a while. What do you see your future being?
Good question. It's interesting. I created a vision jar about 4 years ago, and I actually did a challenge I usually do like this vision jar challenge. I did it this year. And 4 years ago in my vision jar, I put that in the next 3 or 4 years of my life, it was going to change in the most dynamic way. And I wrote these things down, and I'm very specific about, you know, God and the universe being able to reflect back on what you say and what you speak is being really clear. And I was in a direction in my life where I just was like, I was teaching. I didn't know if I wanted to perform anymore, but I knew what I wanted to do had to be me. Then Spectra comes along. So I don't want to end this journey just yet. I want to continue this journey, and one of my main goals now is to continue this journey, but also do a show like this in Las Vegas, like a Las Vegas style show, and or also originate, because I wasn't the original Spectra, it was Raven O, who was amazing. I would love to originate some kind of like androgynous Grace Jones character for the company.
Right. So is there anything else that you'd like to tell the viewers?
I would like to tell you all, come to see one of the most amazing shows in the company for Royal Caribbean, and it's called Spectors Cabaret. I promise you, you will never see anything like this show that you've ever seen. I'm not just saying that because I'm in it, because I've done a lot of shows and I live in Las Vegas. And it is a phenomenal show. Nick Weir and the Moment Factory have created something that's amazing, and people always love it. And on average, people come see it 2 or 3 times a cruise. So challenge yourselves and come cruise on the Anthem, the best ship in the world. Is that a good plug?
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
So about 3.5 years ago, I interviewed Jane Edwards, an aerialist, right in between 2 showings of Starwater. And tonight, that is when I interviewed Terry as well, right in between 2 showings of Spectors Cabaret. So I really got to thank him for taking that time out, because I was basically his break between those 2 shows, and he used it to spend some time with me to talk about Spectors Cabaret and everything that goes on with the 270 Entertainment. So thank him for that, and that about does it for today. Remember, tomorrow is Labadee, so we will be getting there early, and 8:15 time is what the captain said to start entering Labadee, and we will have a 9 o'clock docking time with about 9:15 that we can get off the ship. So be sure to tune in tomorrow for that and see what Labadee's like, as well as all the extra videos related to Labadee. But for now, I am Derek Cohn. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the links.